Okay, let's start with Geeta Dhyana. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf, and people of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent, and the crippled cross mountains. How do you hope that's on? So this morning we'll share beautiful discussion and commentary by Master Shivananda. These two shlokas speak to the relationship, we could say, within the levels of consciousness or within the aspects of God, the manifest, the unmanifest, and the supreme. So the relationship between them is explored in these two shlokas. And Swami Shivananda's commentary is absolutely beautiful. So I think we'll just read it as it is. So 16. And Purusha, different translations, different ways perhaps of relating to Purusha. So one of them that's given to us is person. But beyond the individual person. So supreme person.
With capital P.
Yeah, with capital P. Sometimes spirit or supreme spirit, different translations that might help us to touch. And then here from Lord Krishna, two Purushas there are in this world, the perishable and the imperishable. And so there are a total of three being covered, but two in this world, the perishable and the imperishable. All beings are the perishable, and the kutashta, the unchanging, is called the imperishable. And here, if we can listen well, we'll hear Swami Shivananda explain this. He says, now the Lord describes the three aspects of the divine existence. The three aspects, there are two here. So he's also introducing the next shloka when he says this. Now the Lord describes the three aspects of the divine existence. One is the individual soul called the perishable. The second is the imperishable, or the Maya Shakti of the Lord. And the third is the Purushottama, or the supreme being, or the supreme person. The perishable comprises the whole world of changing forms. From Brahma, the creator, which is also a changing form, the creator, creative aspect. Every time there's a new universe, which is, how many universes are there? Yeah. So every time, and constantly coming into and going out, popping. So from Brahma down to the tiny blade of grass, all movable and immovable objects, immovable such as a rock, right? We know it's moving inside, or this appears immovable. So all movable and immovable objects, all that can be thought of by the mind. Let's see if this resonates. All that can be thought of by the mind. Because the mind can only deal with that which is perishable. It can imagine something beyond, but that's really it. And the only way it does it is it relates to the perishable in order to negate the perishable to get to the imperishable. In other words, the mind is very much in and a part of the world of change. And the only way it can relate to that which doesn't change is to negate change. Does that make sense? That's why a lot of times when it's described to us, truth or the experience of truth, we say not this, not that. The Buddha, when he's asked, what did you get? He says, nothing, but I tell you what I lost. So again, a negation in order to get there. He lost anger, hatred, greed, jealousy, lust, etc., etc. So, okay. All that can be thought of by the mind, all that is made up of the 5 elements, all of the changing, all that has name and forms, all that appears to the naked eye, and what is described as the body and the modifications of the field in the 13th chapter, the modifications of the field, including the mind stuff. So here, when it said body, not just physical body, astral too. And the mind can very much relate to the astral, can't it? Yeah, mind can relate to desires and thoughts and right? And changing in the mind, dreams, all of this, it can relate to dreams. It can't relate to deep sleep, right? It can only relate to deep sleep from the concept of not waking state and not dream state, yes?
Waking.
Okay. So, and everything, all of the modifications of the field. So modifications of the field are really anything that we relate to here. Okay. Our kshara. So the word, there's a K there, so we're striving to pronounce it correctly. Kshara. K-S-H-A-R-A is the way it's transliterated. And we come to akshara in a moment. So kshara is the changing one. So when Lord says, first, there are 2 Purushas there are in this world, the perishable and the imperishable. Now Swami Shivananda is explaining the perishable one, what's meant by the perishable one. Are we there?
Yes.
Okay. So kshara is the changing one. It is the ever-changing form of matter which is inert or insentient. Which is inert or insentient. Insentient. Yeah. Doesn't have intelligence of its own. Doesn't have life of its own. It's insentient. Does that make sense? Everything that we think of as living doesn't have life of its own.
Right. The illumination.
Does that resonate? Does that make sense? It's being shared? Very good. Okay. It's borrowing light. Okay. So even the astral, even the mental function is inert without the light. Okay. Very good. So he says, kshara, it is the ever-changing form of matter, which is inert or insentient. And akshara is the changeless. And now he'll describe this related to kshara. He says in samsara, there are 2 categories arranged in 2 separate groups of beings called Purushas, as they are the limiting adjuncts of the Purusha. Maya Shakti, the illusory power of the Lord, is the seed from which the perishable being takes its birth. Sometimes we say the seed of the being is ignorance. Also Maya.
Yes.
So this divine power, which has the effect of turning things around so that what's inside is seen outside. Starting with the feeling of incomplete or lack. That ego sense. starting with that. That's the Avidya. And that is the handmaiden of Maya, Maya Shakti. Oh, okay. So, called Purushas, they are the limiting adjuncts of the Purusha. So limiting adjunct, there's not actually a limit, but they limit in an as-if way. Maya Shakti, the illusory power of the Lord, is the seed from which all the perishable beings take their birth. It is the seat of all of the latent impressions of desires, actions, etc., of various creatures. Maya Shakti is the Akshara Purusha. The unmanifest condition is generally described as deep ignorance or sleep, for there is neither consciousness nor unconsciousness. It is only a potential state. It is the condition in which all forms of life with its accompanying limitations lie latent, just as the tree lies latent in the seed of the fruit. In this state, matter and energy are one. In this state, sound, matter, and energy exist in an undifferentiated state. In this state, the gunas exist in a state of equilibrium. So now what he's describing is very difficult for the mind to grasp. And it's done again through negation. So first of all, what the mind is dealing with is called manifest. Mm-hmm. The mind can relate to it. It appears to the mind. Even desires and thoughts, the very subtle stuff. Even the feeling of being separate appears to the mind. So all of this is said to be the manifest. The unmanifest, you start with negating manifest and you say, okay, that which isn't manifest is not manifest. It's just saying the same thing. That which is not manifest is not manifest. Unmanifest. What does that mean, but not manifest? But now he's describing it. And I'll even read this paragraph one more time and see if we can catch something from it. We can talk about it for a moment and then we'll move on. But now he's describing the unmanifest, but also this is the seed of the world. It's the seed of the persons, all of the persons, separate souls, separate this, separate that. It's the seed of it. And it, of course, is God. So it's a level of consciousness, we can say. It's a power of God, we can say like this, by way of relating to, from which the manifest arises. And it's how the manifest appears to be, but in unmanifest state. Okay, one more time. In samsara, there are two so this world. He's just used the word samsara to describe what we call world. What the scientists call universe, he's using the term samsara for it. Okay? And it implies illusory. Mm-hmm. Illusory. Science now calls the universe hologram. It's saying the same thing. Illusory. Apparent world. Okay. In samsara, there are two categories arranged in two separate groups of beings called Purusha, as they are the limiting adjuncts of Purusha. Maya Shakti, the illusory power of the Lord, is the seed from which the perishable being takes its birth. It is the seat of all of the latent impressions of desires, actions, etc., of various perishable creatures. Can you relate to in your experience, the seat of the latent impressions and desires? Can you relate to it? It's not manifest, but desires arise from it.
No.
So can you find a way to relate to it?
It just is.
Right? Yeah. You see it? So, and it's our experience as well is that sometimes we sit and we close our eyes and we call forth some image, right? And where is the image arising from? It's arising from that same seat. So
Manifest.
it becomes manifest, becomes observed. But it existed previously as
Unmanifest.
unmanifest, potential.
Pre-manifest.
So if this is helpful
No.
in terms of relating to it. Okay, so this unmanifest, which has not taken shape, nor size, nor form, nor name, nor any of this yet, but is all-inclusive and is infinite. It exists as potential. And potential for what?
Everything.
Everything, anything.
Ain't form.
And the three gunas, which in the manifest, even in the thoughts, the gunas are there, yes?
Yes.
But in that which is underlying the thoughts, that from which the thoughts and the desires and such are arising, that from which they are there in latent form as potential, the three gunas are in equilibrium. So anything can arise from them. They're in equilibrium. Stasis. So anything can come from them. Any idea, any thought, any being, as long as they're according to the spec sheet. Any being, as long as they're in alignment with the laws, can arise from them. So infinite, is that?
I can really relate when we're talking in the Upanishad, we're talking
Yes.
about this void. Like
Yes.
for the mind, it feels like it's a great void.
That's it. But now you can see, but it's full.
Right.
Yeah. It's full of potential. So that which the mind can relate to arises from it.
But the mind cannot always see that it's full. It still sees that void sometimes.
The intellect has the capacity to recognize its fullness. Right? In other words, it's possible to work it out. Because you look around in the universe and you realize if the intellect is really becoming pure and we're following and we're seeing how it works in our own existence, then it can see, okay, anything. It's we reach a place where there's no surprise anymore. There's amazement, but there's no surprise. Anything. 27-headed monster. Okay, all right. I haven't seen that before.
I resonate more with that, with this, with emptiness.
But emptiness doesn't mean emptiness.
No, exactly.
Emptiness is empty of something.
I think that's the literal meaning, and I think that's why I don't say it, because people think it's just empty.
Yeah, people relate to it as a void. It doesn't mean void.
No, yeah, for me, I do see it as like I intellectually or resonate more with emptiness, meaning the same, but for me, emptiness is easier to understand.
Well, it's okay, but then one has to use this intellect and explore what is emptiness then.
I think my brain catch that easier than the fullness.
Your brain is not catching anything, my dear. Your brain is inert.
It's empty of independent reality, right?
It's empty of an independent reality. Yeah, you can say that. It's empty of independent reality. It's empty of individualism or separation.
Right.
Or something
it's like
independent.
an empty cup, and you can put any liquid you can.
There you go. Yeah, that's what's being described. Okay, so that's Maya Shakti, which is the second of the Purushas. And so the world in this way is made of the manifest and the unmanifest.
Oh, yes.
The unmanifest is also world. And it's interesting because it gives a relation to what scientists talk about as dark matter, dark energy, which is really nothing but the potential for something.
Yes.
Okay. So, continuing. The unmanifest condition is generally described as deep ignorance or sleep, for there is neither consciousness nor unconsciousness. So deep sleep is a way of relating to this unmanifest. The potential is there,
Yes, upon reach.
but also nothingness, as it were. No. Yeah. Enough. So it's only a potential state. It is the condition in which all forms of life with its accompanying limitations lie latent, just as the tree lies latent in the seed of the fruit. In this state, matter and energy are one. So this is also what science has observed with quantum behavior. Yeah. They're not quite recognizing it, but this is what's being observed. In this state, the gunas exist in a state of equilibrium. Okay. The imperishable is known as the kutashta, i.e. that which remains immovable like a heap. That which is at the root, kuta, of all these beings is the kutashta. Or kuta also means illusion, and kutashta means that which manifests itself in diverse forms of illusion. Holograms. Appearances. Like the magic show. That which conceals the truth and shows the false thing and deceives the worldly minded people is Maya or Kuta. Veiling and vacillating power. Maya or Kuta. That which is of the form of the avarana vikshepa shakti, the veiling and vacillating power, is Kutashta. As this Maya Shakti cannot be destroyed except by the knowledge of the self, it is said to be endless. That is the reason why this is called akshara. That seed of samsara has no end, therefore it is said to be imperishable in the sense that it is not destroyed in the absence of knowledge of the self. But the seed is scorched or destroyed in toto when one gets the knowledge of Brahman. The illusion vanishes and everything is realized as the one cosmic consciousness. Only the illusory perception of matter is destroyed. So just a second on that. So he's talking about something which doesn't exist as what we're calling it. So those first two, so he's saying there are three levels, as it were, of consciousness. And he's talking about the first two belonging to the world or the world appearance. The manifest and the unmanifest, the perishable and the imperishable. So he's saying the imperishable continues to exist without movement, without change. The imperishable, the Maya, that absolute potential continues to exist as that infinitely. It's always existed and it will always exist, except for the one who realizes the self. And why is that? He says, but I'm asking the question again. And why is that? Because the one who realizes the self sees it as the one who realizes the self sees the unmanifest as
The manifest. The unmanifest.
as God. Sees through it. So to that one, Maya does not exist. See if that makes any sense. See if that resonates at all. So to that one, Maya does not exist. What exists instead of Maya? Lord. Yeah, the Lord, appearing in three ways. And we get to the third now. Appearing in three ways. So in the Christian tradition, this beautiful Daksha, glory to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, it is now and ever after, world without end. And so, speaking of the highest, as the infinite, as the indestructible, as the world without end. Universe ends. This universe, that universe, this civilization ends. We're very close here.
Always.
We can only be a day or two away from this civilization ending here. But does life go on?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Life is indestructible. Life itself is indestructible. The unmanifest, does it continue?
Yeah, it's locked in there.
Yes. And what is the unmanifest? To the one who realizes what's here, the manifest is simply, purely an aspect of the divine, an aspect of God. So it doesn't exist as a thing any longer. So that's what he's sharing here. To the one who sees, ignorance is not a thing. To the one who sees, there is no ignorance. There's just the Lord. So ignorance in that way is actually a very personal thing. Okay. And then he introduces the third. Check on time, we can just introduce it. Purushottama. So Purusha, there were two forms of Purusha, manifest and unmanifest. Destructible and indestructible. This is high stuff. If we're following some of this, it's pretty darn good. And now the highest. So you could say levels of consciousness. At the lowest level of consciousness, it's gross, it's hard, it's like a rock or ice. At the middle level of consciousness, it exists more subtly than steam. But the steam is infinite and any shape can come from it. Water, ice, rock. So imagine a steam that's a steam that from which the five elements arise, yes? So one level is the manifest, the rocky, the hard, including thoughts and such. The next level is this unmanifest potential. And then the next level is the highest consciousness, Purushottama. And he says it's distinct from these two, the perishable and the imperishable. So it's actually beyond the two. He, capital H, of course, is not affected by the evils of the two vehicles or limiting adjuncts of the perishable and the imperishable. He's eternal, pure, intelligent, and free by nature. And here's what Lord Krishna says, number 17. But distinct from the samsara, distinct from this appearance and the potential for the appearance, distinct, is the supreme Purusha called the highest self, the indestructible Lord who, pervading the three worlds, sustains them. So, who through pervading all of this sustains it. Purushottama is beyond the universe, though he pervades the three worlds. Therefore, he is called the supreme being by the Vedas and men of this world. He pervades the three worlds and upholds them, yet he is not tainted by the world. He is above the world or worldliness. So we just introduce it. We need to break for the morning. And then we can come back and
It's hard to
explore.
understand for the mind because already the unmanifest is hard to grasp for the mind. So
Yeah.
there's another level also that is
Yeah,
you cannot get that.
yeah.
But if you look at the highest level is the observer that enables everything, it might be a little easier.
Yeah, that's what he said. What he said. You have that which appears to be, and then you have the special power within consciousness by which what appears to be can arise and appear. So if we were relating to hologram, we could say the form, and then we could say the appearance of light. And then where did the light come from? Purushottama. So even higher. But not tainted by the show. Not affected by the show. Not concerned or caring about what's appearing in the light. or even the color of the light itself.
Right.
So one way, perhaps. And we'll come back to tomorrow, and Swami Shivananda will give us some more ways to relate to it as well. So, okay. Oh, we should close with, we'll have short arati, but the full prayers. Oh, page 174 for anyone joining. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukmiva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukmiva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukmiva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashento Makashi Dukhabhat Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityor Ma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. On below Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Let's rise for Arati.